and with Jericho trying to help the kid get over, but he just doesn't have the it factor that a guy like Chris Jericho does, right? And Jericho can only go so far by himself to help you, right? He can help himself, but to help you, you gotta have some charisma and mentality and skill, and Hook's more of a developmental project at best. So I wouldn't say that he's really on that level where he should really even be in a wrestling ring with Chris Jericho. Um, but let's get a little bit further into the stuff. So Tony Khan. So on Dynamite, they do the thing where Hook comes back and he, kind of, helps he lead. And so the Young Bucks are out there, and then, they kind of make right with Tony Khan, and you can tell that he's holding his hand for way too long in the air. And then they turn around and then he hits him with the mic, which is weird because Tony reacts to it 10 seconds after it happens. And then he starts rolling around ridiculously and overreacting. And then he eventually gets pile drivered in a really weird way where, he's like clinching way too much, and it's just really strange. The whole thing was kind of strange, and there was some bad acting involved, which kind of made it harder to sell. But hey, at least they're trying something, right? So I give them that. They were trying to do an angle, and they were trying to work all this stuff that they've been doing into something. I get it. Shad Khan comes out, and oh my god, and he looks so concerned and stuff, and he sells it. And hey, it was bad acting by everybody involved, but it was, hey, they tried something. Let's see what happens with it, right? Let's give them benefit of the doubt, see where it's going. But then Tony, obviously the Jaguars are owned by the Kahn, so then you're watching the NFL draft and Tony has the neck brace on, which I thought was fun. It's a fun little thing, You're like, oh, okay, yeah, he got Paul drived, he has a neck brace on. Paul driver for a long time was, considered, one of those barred holds, which is why no holds barred matches exist, is because of stuff like that, right? And so I think that it's really interesting that they use that, and that he, is basically getting free publicity for AEW. People going, oh, what's the neck brace from? And then you hear, oh, well, there's AEW, and the Cons also own that, and it gets you into a conversation that's good. And the NFL has such a huge audience, which is why you see the WWE, at WrestleMania taking advantage of the offensive linemen, Lane and Kelsey from the Eagles, and you see Patrick Mahomes with the Super Bowl rings, and JD McDonough on the thing more recently. Um, on I think it was Raw or SmackDown with Mahomes there, which is really cool. Another really cool angle. But then Tony Khan does this weird interview post draft with guys that aren't wrestling guys that are, talking to him about, they're like news anchors just briefly talking about the Jaguars and the draft. And then they make they ask him a little bit about his neck brace, which of course he knows is going to come up. And as they're doing it, he goes, well, we're the Pepsi of wrestling, and our competitors are not the Coke, but the Harvey Weinsteins, is what he said, which is interesting because I assume that's a shot at Vince McMahon, um, who no longer carries stock or is a decision maker there. Not to mention the fact that how many guys are on your rosters that owe a lot to Vince McMahon for where they are in their career? Edge, Christian, you could, Sasha, Claudio. I mean, Samoa Joe at some level, Taz at some level as an announcer. I mean, there's a lot of JR. I mean, there's a bunch of dudes that, even though Vince has been accused of stuff now, and you realize he's not a great guy, like there's a lot of guys that owe Vince for getting to the point where they are in their career that are in your company right now. So I can't imagine that went over real well with everybody in your company. Maybe they, I get it, it's jest and whatever, but how many, like the amount of space that WWE dominates in Tony's head is kind of concerning, because he could have absolutely used that as an opportunity to go, hey guys, yeah, AEW is this amazing product that we have, and I want all Jags fans, to support it, and other football fans too. That's a great thing, is it's what brings us together instead of dividing us. And instead he goes, oh, well, we're going to divide and put down wrestling as a whole for people who don't watch it, that already don't like it. And I'm going to say something dumb about Harvey Weinstein that's going to make him not want to watch it even more. Like, I just don't understand the thought process. Tony's just not thinking big picture. He's being very petty about it. And even if he does think it somehow works in a storyline, so the storyline on Dynamite is basically you got turned on by a heel faction, so you're a face. And so if you're playing that up in public, you're a face. That was a heel interview. Like, like what part of this don't you understand? Like that that doesn't vibe with what you're trying to get across, right? And this is what we're talking about with creative and just not understanding like time and place, and there's a way to do things. And Tony Khan is just not understanding how those things come to fruition, how you build equity with an audience. And even though you can have jabs that are a little bit outside of your story where people kind of, oh, okay, you know, kayfabe is a very delicate thing, and when you really abuse it like that, people don't like that in wrestling. They don't like watching that because they go, well, now I don't, like not knowing what to expect is a good thing in some ways, but there's also tropes in wrestling that fans rely on to be true so that they can follow along, right? And so you don't want to go too far with, violating your own stories and your own methodologies that you're setting up. And I think the truth of the matter is he just doesn't know how to set them up. And so that's what a lot of this is. I just really wish he would take a step back and get somebody that knows creative. Scott Dumore is not working for TNA anymore. So I mean I don't know why that wouldn't be a phone call that you would try to make it. Hey, what are you doing now? Maybe he doesn't want to work for you and he'd rather just own his own company to not deal with the oversight anymore. Obviously, that's what got him with Anthem and trying to buy that company and got him up out of there, even though he did a great job rebuilding it. But he's proven that he can build it. Even a guy like Eric Bischoff has some good ideas, even if you don't, whatever you think about him, okay, whatever, bad stuff, but he's had some good ideas. NWO was an amazing idea, and really, that's an idea that even WWE is really just repackaging with the Bloodline now. It's just more intimate because they're all really related, and and they're not killing it by putting a bunch of people who shouldn't be in it in there and doing crazy spin-offs. Although they are starting to do some spin-offs. That's what the solo thing is. They are spinning it off a little bit, where there's going to be different sides of it now. So there's a lot of value there, right? I would call Scott, I would call Eric, I would say, hey, let's get some creative minds in here, and instead of burning all these bridges with just nonsensical stuff and these stupid shots all the time at WWE, like you're not competing, and Triple H is not going to reply to this. Like he might do it in a personal interview when somebody asks him, like if he goes back on McAfee or something, they might say, "Hey, what do you think of all this Tony stuff?" And he's going to say, I'm too busy to deal with that. I don't care." And I almost be willing to bet that's what he would say. But it's just it's just really perplexing, the obsession Tony has with taking shots and acting like he's a competitor with WWE. Dude, like, you know how much equity WWE has put in from, building out from territories to doing risky things in other territories that got them to the point where they are, that nobody else was willing to do. The stories about Harley Race pulling a gun on Hulk Hogan because he's in his territory, and I don't know how true all that stuff really is, but stuff like that did happen, and that's how serious they took this kind of stuff back then and protecting the business, right? And WWE went through all that and built the equity to get to where they are now. They went through the Monday Night Wars. They now own all the rights to ECW and WCW. Paul Heyman's a WWE Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? And it's just, Eric Bischoff, I think, is a WWE Hall of Famer, right? Ted Turner was, going to war with them, and is talked about sometimes on air. Like it's all those things have happened to get WWE where it is, and it's as hot as it is right now. And you're basically trying to piggyback off of that by taking shots at them all the time when everybody loves them at their height right now. Like that just doesn't. Think about that, Tony. Like think about it for a second. Like there's other ways to probably take advantage of that if you're really trying to. Hey, if you really wanted to act like a competitor, you could call Triple H and say, "Hey, what if we invaded NXT?" That would blow people's minds, right? Like that would be cool. They could do some stuff like that, but I mean, you're not like pushing WWE. Like, look at your audience, look at their audience, look at your story and your show, look at their story and their shows, right? It's a whole different ballgame, dude. You're talking single A to the major leagues. Like, it's not the same thing. And then you've got TNA and New Japan kind of floating in the middle there between you guys as far as quality goes, because there's a lot of even indies that have better quality shows right now from a storyline perspective than AEW. And it wasn't always that way in AEW. At the beginning, they kind of had some good ideas and stuff, and I think maybe it's run its course, and some of those people left, and it is what it is. I mean, you still have Jericho and Edge and a lot of up and coming guys. I like what they're doing with Swerve, although they make some weird decisions too, like when he's defending his title and he gets two, and they didn't even really celebrate the fact that he won, and it was kind of weird. And but whatever. It is what it is now. But think about what you're going to do next, not about the next shot you're going to take at WWE. Like, I just don't like what is going on up there. Like, stop it. Just stop it. And who's not telling you that works for you, or do they not feel like they can tell you? I mean, Tony seems like a nice guy who's kind of a pushover, to be honest, like as a person. So, I mean, I don't know why his staff and creative people in AEW are not telling him, hey, not a good idea, to keep taking shots at WWE, because it just makes us look petty and silly right now, especially when they're on top. When AEW started, it worked a little differently because WWE was really in a downturn with their creative, and it was kind of like, ugh, like this is not fun to watch because Vince was changing every show, as we now know. Like right before they went out there, they were rewriting everything, and you could tell because there was just no continuity between what they were doing. And it's so weird because now it's completely the opposite, where WWE seems to have total continuity in what they're doing, and they're seeing things through even if they're not working. And AEW now has no continuity and doesn't have any idea what they're doing. So I hope that they get it together. We all want to see AEW succeed, but what I don't like is this movement of AEW fans that goes, "Well, it's fine, just leave them alone," and blah blah blah. It's like no. We want them to survive. That means we want them to be better. So we need to point this stuff out and make them be better. Like, they don't need to keep doing this crap. Like, they have plenty of talent. There's no reason why they can't just come up with their own cohesive storylines and build their own stuff. And yes, you can take an occasional shot. That's part of the business, right? I'm not saying never ever say anything about the other company. In fact, I think that's one of the things I hated about the company for a long time is they weren't allowed to mention each other. And there's really no point to that. You're all trying to get fans and you're all in the same business. It's okay to mention that this guy worked there or whatever. Whatever. In the Punk video thing, I didn't really think did them any good, but it's whatever. Who cares? But I just you have so much talent. Like, learn how to use it. Like, learn how to use it. It's not that hard. Stop having the same match over and over. The reason why you have to announce matches all the time is because there's no build, so nobody knows what the hell's going on. Like, it's okay to announce matches once in a while, but if nobody knows what's going on because you're not coming up with some kind of cohesive storyline that ties in and weaves together like fabric, that's how it should be. That's what Bloodline's doing right now. They're now on, the seventh rung of fabric of that story where they are still stitching more and stitching more. And now they're adding another type of thread and adding a new element to it. And that's the way it has to be done. Like, if you want it to be good, and it's not always going to be as intricate as that, but even look at what they're doing with AJ and LA Knight is even better than what they're doing in most of the AEW shows. I mean, and that's not even really that intricate of a build. You know what I mean? It's just doing something cohesively over and over and following through. It's not that difficult. So I hope AEW gets it together. We all want to see them be successful, and they were really fun at the beginning of their journey for those first few years. But they got to do something different, and they got to stop taking pot shots at people that are doing it a lot better than they are. I don't know what else to say about that. What do you have to say about it? Subscribe, put it in the comments.